Hello, I'm Michael Shawn, and welcome to Roger Dykes Just Sayin. Roger Dykes is a teacher and counselor with a master's degree in family counseling from Texas Tech University. He is the owner of UV Blake Records and has written a book titled Non-Persons Rolling in a Normal World. And there's a few more things. Roger was born with cerebral palsy. Now a quadriplegic, he has been confined most of his life to a wheelchair. And for a while, even enjoying a career as a stand-up or sit-down comedian and after-dinner speaker. Disabled? Yes, but you forget about that pretty quickly because Roger thrives. So here is Roger Dykes. I've been looking forward to this, Roger. You know, I'm getting where I kind of miss you. Just talk to you every 3 weeks. Like
Shuckins.
Yeah.
Well, my door is always open. Come on in.
Yeah, his door's not really open, folks.
Now there's COVID everywhere.
Oh,
and I'm not
Roger.
wearing my mask.
Yeah, well, and we're not showing you either. Okay, well, man, are you ready to start?
Anytime.
Well, 3, 2, 1, go.
Good morning, Michael. Glad you could drop in. Bring all the podcast listeners with you.
You know, Roger,
Yes, sir.
podcasts are like casinos. I know you may not have ever been in a casino, but podcasts are like casinos in that you can be there at 3 o'clock in the afternoon or 3 o'clock in the morning, and you don't know whether it's day or night. You know,
That's true.
so when you say good morning, but somebody might be listening to this podcast in India, for instance, and thinking, well, it's not morning. I don't have an Indian accent.
I agree. You don't.
Oh, man. Oh, good morning, Roger.
Good morning, sir. I'm glad you can make it.
We do
And
have a bright and early morning time frame to record this podcast. And so it's always good to get a good morning from you, man. I have been waiting for this deal. I mean,
Me
for
too.
3 weeks, I've been waiting to do another podcast with you.
We need to get together more often and do more of these, I think.
Yes, whatever the budget will allow, Roger. That's
Okay.
That's our saying here. You know.
Yeah, I know. That's the reason we barely make it every 3 weeks.
Roger, after last episode of your podcast, you and I discussed some things that we wanted to start doing. One of them, I thought you had a great idea when you brought up about the Roger Dykes mailbag. Of course, nowadays a mailbag is more email, but man, we printed out a bunch of these responses to your podcast, and these people ask some riveting questions.
No doubt, because we have a riveting audience.
Well, I just wanted to say that the first rattle out of the bag is we got a message here, and they say, tell us about your love life.
Next question.
Oh, Roger. I know that from time to time in your life, you have had special young ladies pay particular attention to you. Well, that's all we're going to say about that, folks.
Yeah, I'm trying to work on that one. You're putting me in a box here. I'm trying to remember when that happened.
I want to say, I'm looking at Roger on camera while we're doing this, and I have seen him blush for the first time ever. I mean, ever. Hey, Roger, there are a number of questions about for instance, your wheelchair.
Yes, sir.
And these are sincere questions here. They say
we'll try to give sincere answers.
You live there in West Texas, and when there is the periodic dust storms that West Texas is famous for, do you have to stop and clean out and oil up your wheelchair?
No, I just don't get out of the house.
So wheelchair maintenance is not a big issue with you?
No, not with the one I've got. It can be if you got a motorized chair and all that sort of thing. There's a lot more maintenance to it. But I have just a standard manual wheelchair. It's standard to the extent that it doesn't have a motor connected to it. It is different in that where most wheelchairs you've ever seen have the big wheels in the back and the small wheels in the front. I have the big wheels in the front and the small wheels in the back, which explains why you never want to send an order of a wheelchair to be made at Texas A&M.
Roger, which reminds me, we have learned on earlier podcasts that you spent quite a bit of time as a career after-dinner speaker and even a nightclub comedian for a while. One of your emails here talks about hecklers, and did you have hecklers? And everybody does. How did you handle hecklers back in the day?
Well, we probably didn't have as many hecklers as a lot of people do, because there's a certain amount of respect and not wanting to over-intimidate the disabled person on the stage. So
nobody wants to heckle the guy in the wheelchair. Okay. All right. So here's it. And we're really shifting gears. From what I glean here, it is your point of view that the system within the state government there at Austin, if you're from the Texas area, and that system is, for lack of a better term, antiquated in that decisions were made 20 and 30 plus years ago that now no longer fit the way things work. Now, we've gone into a lot of that on this podcast, and anyone's welcome to go back and binge a little bit on earlier episodes, and we're not going to get into that now. But when this was brought up, I actually answered this question and got in a quick back and forth comment with this person. And I said, you have to understand Roger's point of view on this right now, that the world has gone COVID crazy. And with that in mind, no one is really paying attention to a lot of what else is going on because of the fact that everything is centered on the COVID crisis, however you perceive that to be real or less real or whatever. But COVID is really what's on people's minds. So when you begin to try to communicate with the people who are in charge of your system there in Austin, your system of support, it's harder to do that at present because of the COVID crisis. Now, that being said, this other person came back and said, for crying out loud, the governor is in a wheelchair. Meaning, I think, by that shouldn't at least Austin be more aware and more sensitive to the needs of people who are totally, completely disabled and in a wheelchair as well? Do you find that to be the case?
Well, I have met with Governor Abbott. He and I, we're not friends as in that sense, But I've met with him on more than one occasion, and we've talked about some things. By the way, just in passing, he is the first governor that I've ever been with or close to that we saw eye to eye. Most of them are taller than me.
Oh, Roger.
But in this case, we do see eye to eye, and he's not in disagreement with what I'm saying. But with his responsibilities, he does not use and shouldn't use his wheelchair as any sort of crutch, if you will,
Certainly.
to make his points. So as a result, he's taking care of government as he should. And my condition, my situation does not connect with COVID directly. So he's not there's not been a time that he was really been available to sit down and work on these kind of issues because of all the pressing issues. He has given me names and given me people to talk to. I've talked to those people. I don't think it's getting the job done. Right now, COVID's got me in a box. Most everybody in Austin's working from home. They don't always get their emails answered, nor do they get their phones answered as much as they would if they were in the office. So right now, it's just not a good time to work on these kind of issues. What I'm hoping happens, maybe by next year, COVID will have been conquered and we'll have the vaccine out. People will be feeling better about it. People will be more willing to go back to their offices, go to work, and be available to take calls and answer emails.
All right. Now, I understand what you just said, and most of what you just said, I could have easily predicted that you would say that. But I don't want to just let this go by without pointing out that you have serious concerns about situations that you continue to handle, not 3 months from now or 6 months from now, but situations that you are handling today, right now, this weekend, and every week and every weekend concerning caregivers and your ability to get and receive a lot of the care that you depend on, folks. It's not like, well, Roger will just be uncomfortable if they're not there. No, these are things that Roger depends on for everything you can think of. And so caregivers are meant to be provided, but then, of course, can't be many times because of situations that you're dealing with, because of situations that are created by the government, bureaucratic whatnot of this and that and this and that. And we're not going to go into all that right here, right now, but it is very courteous of you, Roger, to say, well, in another 6 months, maybe we'll be able to talk about this, because this is happening right now and has been. And that's another thing that you've got to be careful of, because, well, Roger's been this whole situation began to start 4 or 5 years ago, and Roger has found a way to work this out and work that out and make all the ends meet. You and I both know that it could be said that your days are numbered without some drastic things happening that are not anything that we even want to think about. So there.
Well, let me clarify that. I know where you're coming from, but let me clarify. I don't want it to sound like I'm on my deathbed. There's nothing physically wrong with me that will take my life anytime soon. But when you say you're making ends meet, you're getting by, the more people I have to use or ask or involve that are volunteers, for example. When volunteers are wonderful people, and I would be in a world of hurt without them. But you can't depend on volunteers forever, because they just will get tired. They'll wear out. Then they have their own lives to lead. And they haven't got time to spend their time here with me. That's why we have the paid caregivers we do. And as my world develops, and as it becomes harder to get caregivers because of finances and other things, I'm getting more and more dependent on the volunteers, and that's not a wise thing to do. I need to be able to fund the caregivers that need to be here when I need them. So
yeah. All right. Well said. I'm going to shift gears now, Roger.
All right.
I'm going to go to some heavy stuff here.
Ooh.
I'm telling you, man, these people with their emails, they are really zeroing in on you. This one says, I understand that you are from Texas. So you want to confirm that, Roger? You're
that part is true. Yes.
Absolutely a Texan.
Yes.
And I only pray, Roger, I pray, and so many of the people listening to your podcast are praying the same thing, that you give absolutely, as a Texan, the correct answer to this question. Are you ready? Brace yourself. Here we go.
I'm braced.
Roger, do you, in your opinion, believe that people should put beans in chili?
I'm a person who is opposed to beans in chili. I like my beans separate. I love beans, but I love them separate from the chili. I don't like mixing my foods together.
Bless you, Roger Dykes. And after all, you're a Texan, and people know.
And also, I don't like my tacos and my pizza mixed together, so I don't ever order a taco pizza.
Texans do not put beans in their chili. Roger, you have listeners in California, you know. And we don't want to be insensitive to them.
Not at all.
And that if we were hungry for chili with beans in it, we'd catch the next jet to California.
I'm sure they make very good chili with beans out there.
I wouldn't go as far as to say that, would you?
Well, I want them to continue making it out there.
Well, all right, let's move on here. This is a good question. This is another serious question. Roger, when you go out in public, what is your greatest fear?
Fear is not a word I associate with my world. I am virtually not afraid of anything.
I would agree with that, having observed you for a number of years.
So it's
I've never seen you afraid.
I don't deal in fear. I just don't. I never have. My parents didn't raise me to be afraid. Now, I can tell you that one of my greatest fears is the idea that I will one day need to be in a facility of some sort and be totally, absolutely controlled by the institution I'm in. I've been there once. That's a long story back, and we don't have time for it now. Learned a great deal. And one of the things I learned is I don't ever want to go back. I don't like distancing with friends and not being able to operate within the community. And that's the whole purpose, by the way, of the program I'm on, is to make sure that the disabled person is kept within the community and having a life within the community. So I certainly appreciate that aspect of the program. It just still needs some tweaking done to it. But the program itself is a good idea. We hadn't discussed this, but the caregiver I was with at the time, when she rolled me into the nursing home, I was not going to be there. I was not going to be left there. I was only there to be weighed. But she said, Roger, your personality completely changed, because I saw the fear go through you of being left there. That would be one of the few things that scares me, is the idea of being institutionalized and being alone in that sense.
Yeah. Some things that you actually skipped over, and I want to mention, when you talk about things that you fear or would at least say are disagreeable to you, or let's just say you have to look at the humorous side, because laughing sometimes is better than getting frustrated or crying. And that is the things that you spoke about in your book. Roger, your book is available on Amazon in audio form. The name of your book is Non-Persons Rolling in a Normal World, and we want to mention that to our folks. It is available on, I believe, on Kindle, but on Amazon for sure, in audio form. And the reason why I'm bringing that up now is because in that book, you talk about 4, 5, 6, 7 things in one particular chapter that you endure. And by the way, you were with a young lady many of the times in that book. But you talk about a number of things that you endure while going to stores or going to restaurants, and when you're out in public, how you are so many times treated as a non-person.
I've been in stores, and I was in one store specifically, and I went in to buy something, and I was talking to the clerk behind the counter, and we did our business, and I think I actually bought the item. And when we got out of the store and onto the sidewalk, my associate with me that time said, Roger, I'm really angry. And I said, well, why? And she said, didn't you notice he never looked at you? He answered your questions, but he never did look at you. He only looked at me. And she said, that makes me so angry. And I said, well, don't be angry. I said, there's no reason to be angry about it. Just understand that he thought it was a ventriloquist act, and there's no point talking to the dummy in the wheelchair. But this is the way things work. People are trained not to look at or deal with disabled people. Now, this is several years ago, and I'm hoping, and I think there's been some improvement along these ways, but you've got to remember that as children, you were probably told, don't look, don't point, don't talk to the person in the wheelchair, the person on crutches, or the one with a seeing-eye dog, or whatever.
It's like when the waitress comes to the table and asks the person you're with, which may be your date, what would he like? Or later comes back and say, would he like a drink of water? And you're sitting right there.
Well, it starts off, though, with, does he need a menu? And one of my friends answered her this way, he can have one this time because he does like pointing at the pictures. She gave it to me without realizing that I could talk because I didn't say anything. And so she came back, and I gave her my order and my date's order because she realized how insulted I could have been. But I choose not to be angry, and I choose not to be insulted. I understand it's an education process. That's what we do these things for. That's what we're doing the podcast for.
Well, but you have lived your life dealing with this, and that's what your book talks about. And
yes.
So anyone interested in that, it is available there on Amazon. Let me go on here. Let me check this out with you here, because I've been waiting for this. I want to hear your response to this. I think I know what it is, but you never know until you know. Roger, would you consider going into politics?
Probably I would make a very good politician. I think I would make an excellent politician because, you see, I have most of the things that politicians need already in me, and that is I don't stand for anything and everybody pushes me around.
Oh, what you're doing here is you're not taking that as a serious question. There are people I know that think, man, let's get Roger Dykes up there and let him speak for his piece of the pie, his segment of the community. And, I think people think that about you a lot of times.
Well, I'm happy as a spokesperson. That's one thing. That is not a politician. A spokesperson, yes. I would thoroughly enjoy getting to do it. I think I could bring some clarity to some issues that people in Austin or Washington or wherever it might be have not had brought to their attention. So to that extent, it would be, that's my goal, in fact, is to get there with that intent of expressing. I may get there via a Zoom meeting, or I may get there in person. It doesn't matter, because seeing the wheelchair and me in it has an effect on people that just hearing me say on a conference call,
yes,
it doesn't have the same effect.
Well, we've discussed that, and you're absolutely correct. Well, Roger and I this was one that when I saw this, I was so glad that we really got a chance to pay attention to a lot of the people that have responded to your podcast. And this question is, Roger, if there were such a thing as a Make-A-Wish Foundation for adults, and they came to you and they said, make a wish, Roger, and let us make it come true for you, what would your wish be?
3 more wishes.
There's no getting around you, is there? But you know, this is a serious question. If there were such a thing as a Make-A-Wish Foundation for adults, what would Roger Dykes wish? Something that would be something you thought, well, I never dreamed I'd get to do this.
Well, I think that, I don't think that way. I'm sorry. That would be very challenging to answer. What I would like right now is a foundation with money in it to keep my world together, so that I don't have to ever leave home and I can stay here regardless of whether state funding for it or not. If it was independently funded, then I would have more of a guarantee of being able to live out my life here without going to any sort of facility. So if that were a wish that I could make and get, it would be to have the funding to keep me and allow me to get the kind of help I need when I need it, as much as I need, without having to go to an institution.
Yeah. And there are a whole group of people like you with cerebral palsy who I'm certain would wish for the same thing.
Oh, I have no doubt.
Yeah.
One of the curses and blessings at the same time of being, particularly with cerebral palsy, where you have the mental capacity that I'm blessed with and thankful for. Part of that, the blessing is I'm blessed that I can think and I can reason and I can talk and I can communicate. The downside is that I also am more aware of what I'm not able to do. I can see where I'm not able to do other things that other people are allowed to do. And I see the future in my world as not being that bright in terms of being able to stay in a quasi-independent state. If you're a mentally challenged person, you don't have the ability to reason, and you may not have the ability to solve problems and things like that, but you're more happy and more well contented to live in a facility because it meets all of your basic needs and you don't see outside of that. However, if in my case, where I've been trained and taught, and much of that funded by the state of Texas, to see the other side, to see what's out there, and then to be told it's out there, but you can't quite get to it, is sometimes very frustrating.
Roger, we're thankful, too, that you communicate on the level that you do. I know that most of the people listening to this podcast think of you as not only an interesting person and a person that you always want to get to know a little better, but also they appreciate you as their podcast friend. The other thing that you are challenged by that you didn't mention was you are podcast co-host challenged.
Well, you're a wonderful co-host.
Oh, good. You know, if you fish around, you can get Roger to say something nice to you.
I'm just so thankful that every 3 weeks you're willing to drop in like this.
Oh, my.
Of course, that also shows what little company I have.
Well, you know, Roger, you realize I have to cut that out, what you just said. Roger, bless you, man. We're out of time, and we're going to wrap this one up. There'll be another one in 3 weeks. Roger Dykes Just Sayin, and I wish everyone could see the big grin on your face right now. It's worth $1 million, I'll tell you. And Roger, will you be back for the next one?
I'll be back, and I'm going to think through that love thing and see if I can come up with a better answer next week or next time.
Oh, your love life.
Yes. Or maybe in 3 weeks I'll develop one.
There you go. Oh, that's the ticket. All right, Roger. Bless you, brother. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you.
Good. Man, I drug you all over the field, didn't I?
That's fine. We'll come back.
It was a rocky start, but then it was a rocky landing.
Well, yeah, and it was rocky all the way through. No, next week. Next time, not next week, but next time we do it, it's fine to bring it up, and then that gives me 3 weeks to think about it. That's fine too, and then I'll have a very good answer for you next time.
Okay, let me mention something to you. I should have mentioned this to you earlier. You've been listening to Roger Dykes Just Sayin. If you'd like to get a message to Roger, his Facebook account is listed as Roger Dykes. Become a friend, or you can send your questions and comments to rogerdykes51@gmail.com. That's ROGERDYKES51@gmail.com. Our podcast reveals a new episode every 3 weeks. Rollout is on Wednesday evening, shortly after dark, Texas time. Join us next time for our next episode of Roger Dykes Just Sayin. I'm Michael Shawn. On behalf of Roger Dykes, thanks for listening.